Hello everyone, for this Classic Movie Monday I'm going to be reviewing The Graduate. Unfortunately, I'm still not able to get access to the last two classic films that a fan wanted me to review. However, once I do manage to finally get a hold of them, I will watch them and review them. But for now, I have to resort to films that I can get a hold of and review. So without further ado, I'm going to discuss briefly The Graduate. And the reason why I would put The Graduate in particular in the underrated category, because again, it's one of those films that I think a lot of people are aware of, and that sort of reference. Also is the film that kind of started Dustin Hoffman's career, sort of. He's fairly young in this film, so his persona and the kinds of characters that he plays is sort of referenced in particular to this film, as you'll see in like later films when he plays an autistic person in Rain Man. So I think this film in particular not only sort of jump-started his career and his sort of style of acting and his character choices, but it also kind of reflects something that I think was maybe prevalent, at least to the time when the film was made. I believe this was a 1960s film. And I think it's worth discussion, and a lot of people seem to talk about the film and what it is ultimately trying to say. But I'll sort of break it down as to what the film's about and sort of express the themes and things that I've noticed throughout the film. So basically the plot of this film revolves around Dustin Hoffman's character, who is Benjamin Braddock, and he is a recent college graduate from, I guess, the East Coast. Like as you'll see in like the way beginning of the film, he lands in Los Angeles, and I guess he came from the East Coast somewhere from school. And he comes home as a graduate, and he's really uncertain of what he wants to do with the future. He's even kind of freaked out about it. It's almost like he has ultimately no direction, and he doesn't even really want to face the future at all, as you'll see throughout the film. And he kind of has a awkward persona. Again, he's not really that confident. He's not really sure of himself. He's very insecure. He doesn't really have any leadership qualities. So this is really hard, especially if you're playing, I guess, a more male-like figure, because often male-like figures or kinds of personalities that we aspire to be are ones who have strong leadership skills, a lot of confidence, the ability to execute goals, and have a real sense of self. Dustin Hoffman's character, Ben, is completely the opposite of any kind of traditional protagonist male character. He's very unsure of himself. He has a lot of insecurities with who he is. He's sort of incapable of really, I guess, understanding, I think, relationships at times, and I think this kind of confuses him. But I think there is this ability of him to be a sort of moral character. Like he sort of starts to understand certain things and tries to think through things in a more in-depth, more of an in-depth level. In particular, when you see within the film, he ultimately develops this affair with this woman named Mrs. Robinson, who I will say is and basically, she sort of manipulates Ben into sort of this affair, and completely takes advantage of him and his sort of, kind of weak mental state and mind, just completely takes that to her advantage and ultimately uses him. And there is this sense for Ben to sort of move beyond the initial capacity of what he's used to. So again, before he wasn't really like socializing or trying to figure out in the beginning of the film who certain people are and, you know, asking them questions, but then suddenly he just starts asking Mrs. Robinson who he's having an affair with. You know, he's like, I want to talk, and I want to talk about things, and I want to know about certain things, and, you know, he kind of discovers a lot of dark revelations, and it really shows that there is, I think, this desire for him to move forward and find a sense of self and a sense of understanding of other people, but he just doesn't have a direction. It almost seems like that nobody really gave him a direction within life. His parents seem to treat him as this great, magnificent achiever, but then he has nothing really to show for it with his personality and with his capacity to, you know, go out and find some work, because even his dad within the film says, why haven't you, I don't think he literally comes out and says, like, why don't you have a job now? I think he almost says, like, what are you doing? Like, all you're doing is just sitting around all day and doing nothing, and you're just being really unproductive, and this is not cool. So I think they did, like, overcoat his life, and that's probably what made it difficult for him to kind of figure out himself and who he is. So there might have been some parental issues there, but I don't think that's really explored a lot in the film. Most of the film focuses, again, on his relationship with Mrs. Robinson, and then ultimately his relationship with his daughter, Elaine. Now, Elaine is sort of his age, again, a college graduate student. And the interesting thing about this relationship is that I don't think it's that well established. It's hinted at that there are certain things that are going on within the film that relate to their relationship, but you kind of don't really understand why Ben ultimately has feelings for Elaine, and you don't really understand why she has feelings for him. It's almost kind of like a fairy tale, but not as, romantic or as emotionally, I guess, stimulating of a relationship as a fairy tale. So it's kind of difficult, I think, to really understand their relationship, especially when she does discover ultimately who he is and what he did sort of to her family, which still baffles me. But ultimately, it sort of deals with this question within the film about not only the uncertainty of the future, but kind of like the incapacity to, I guess, understand, adulthood, of responsibility, of rationality. It's almost like the two lovers, Ben and Elaine, kind of don't understand the implications of what ultimately running away means and what consequences that has. But I think partially that could be due to the parents, and I think in particular with, obviously, Mrs. Robinson, who clearly is not a good mother figure, and to maybe Ben's parents, who didn't really raise Ben to take responsibility, who just, and even then already at, like, when he's 21, they're all excited that he proposed to Elaine. And the thing is that there's not a whole lot of context with their relationship, and it doesn't feel like that the parents really know anything about the relationship. So again, it feels like that the parents, both of the parents, or both of the pairs of parents within this movie, don't really know how to deal with their children. And you'll kind of sort of see, though, why that is, in particular with Elaine's side, or Elaine's parents. More so Mrs. Robinson, because again, you have the whole affair there. So Ben is ultimately familiar with the relationship. I think, though, that certain things within the film are handled really well. Again, you do have this kind of whole generation shift, because, again, you know, the younger generation is obviously not going to fully understand the older generation, but again, regardless, I think there's also the incapacity of the parents to sort of take responsibility for their kids, and this ultimately results in their kids rebelling and them going against their parents, and for justifiable reasons, and saying, look, I'm going to, you know, leave, and I'm going to go away now because I can't be around you all anymore. So I think that there is this sense within the film that grasps that generational sort of difference between the kids and the parents. And, you know, and it does kind of show that, you know, rebellion and rebelling against sort of, I guess, responsibility doesn't ultimately result in your favor, and it's best to do things that reflect a grounds in reality, instead of searching for this kind of fantasy of irresponsibility with no obligations and no real worth, really. I mean, you kind of see the characters going through life, and they don't really have a sense of worth to contribute. So I think that's really, though, the heart of the film is this idea that that ultimately that rebellion and responsibility can't go hand in hand, and it's up to all of us to take some form of responsibility and credibility and develop a sense of moral character and rise above whatever circumstances that we've been through in life, and realize that, you know, not everything is going to be handed to you. It's, you know, you're not going to get a huge golden pot over the rainbow, but you might get some gold and some pieces of your life that showcase your full potential. So again, I think it's really just trying to reiterate that point of how rebellion really just leads to uncertainty, and lack of responsibility will result in consequences. And maybe what ultimately happens to Elaine and Ben will probably be what has happened to the parents, maybe, of Elaine in the past. So again, it's kind of relaying those things and how ultimately those things could result. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about The Graduate. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But I think that's really all I can say. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.